I think it's about time that we stop calling all of the thrash albums that have been coming really over the past decade as the thrash metal revival. I think that with this being about a decade old, the idea of it being a revival is past. It's now essentially the second breath, the second life, the resurrection of thrash metal. And we have bands now that are coming out of all corners of the globe that are now getting 3 or 4 albums into their discography, into their careers. And the band that we're going to be talking about today, Suicidal Angels, is one of them, with their new album Divide and Conquer, released here in 2014. Thrash is one of those subgenres of metal that I think really had so much momentum early on that whenever it kind of went away for a little while, it really didn't. It was just kind of, in limbo. There were a lot of bands that were just trying some different things at the same time. Some were experimenting with some dark wave or some darker sounds. There were others that were going in a more pop-oriented direction. Of course, I'm speaking more on terms of some European styles versus some American styles. And then whenever it came back, everyone was like, whoa, where did that come from? Well, it came from the fact that a thrash metal band through and through is still a band that is going to kick the most ass whenever they're doing what they do best, which is thrashing your neck off. Suicidal Angels is a band that hasn't really gone through the 30-year career of some of the other bands that are on the roster of thrash metal. However, being 4 albums in and actually garnering a lot of applause and garnering a lot of attention through not only through fans, but also from thrash metal bands themselves by touring with bands such as Overkill or the Big Four. They definitely have made a name for themselves early on. And really, whenever you get 4 or 5 albums in, you start to really culture an identity for yourself, and you kind of have the freedom to do a little bit more in order to expand your sound and explore your sound, which perhaps could explain why thrash kind of took that little left turn in the 1990s. However, Suicidal Angels is not okay with doing that. They'd rather just do what they do best. They're kind of learning the mistakes of their peers and recognizing that they should not do that, because this album definitely has a lot of thrash orient to it. However, it also has some of the other things that have kind of been a portion of the thrash metal subculture to it as well. You could definitely hear through the expansion of some of their songs, such as White Wizard or Seed of Evil and Control the Twisted Mind. You see a lot of that ability to really lengthen a track and really make it so there's no dead space, there's no dead time. This is all a constructive process that definitely doesn't feel like it's leaving any seconds unused. It's instead a time in which they're able to maybe slow down the pace just a little bit while at the same time still maintaining a very, very haphazard and very headbang-friendly environment. And that's something that these songs are able to culture. These are just 3 of the 10 tracks that are on this album. That clocks in at close to 50 minutes in length. However, there are definitely 3 that are able to showcase the overall scope of what Suicidal Angels is able to accomplish and have been able to accomplish now for the past 4 albums. And this is certainly one that some people could easily compare to a transitional album, to a potential, high album plateau. They're almost like their Master of Puppets or Injustice for All. They're coup d'etat, so to speak, when the best may in fact still be yet to come. I really enjoy the fact that whenever I read Suicidal Angels song titles, I really harken back to like Coma of Souls from Creator and some of the great bands of Teutonic thrash from the late 1980s, early part of the 1990s. I get a lot of those feelings whenever I get it. And these guys are a Greek band, so they're from Europe. It's not necessarily like this is an American band that's sort of somehow just in weird song titles able to really impose upon a tradition that's not of their continent. Instead, this is something that just brings back really, really good memories, and the riffage and the way in which they sort of space out the songs and are able to blend that breakneck thrash along with some songs that have a little bit more scope to it also reminds me a lot of Coma of Souls by Creator and some of their other late 80s output. I really dig the fact that there's a great combination of both, just standard thrash metal destruction and these, large scope tracks on the same album. I think that gives a lot more of a creative nod to the band, not to mention it also offers a lot more to the listener. It gives them a little bit more to digest, and it gives them a lot more to kind of think about. And because of that, you're not necessarily in that motion where you are just headbanging for 30 minutes straight, and then the album ends, and you think, okay, well, that was just another album I could headbang to for 30 minutes. Instead, this is one where it's close to 50 minutes, it's still 10 tracks, they've expanded some of the songs, and it gives it a lot more of a mental edge. It gives it a lot more of a constructive edge. It gives it a lot more of that edge where somebody needs to sit down and think a little bit. And that's the reason why this album is so solid. It does give and offer a lot to a listener. You can really hear that traditional Greek style of singing as well, that Greek metal feel to it, where the lyricisms, the dialect and everything like that kind of gives you like a strange thrash metal rotting Christ feel, which is an interesting idea. And let me tell you, it's definitely something that's interesting to really listen to, and these guys have, it can't be helped. I mean, that's their culture. That's what it's all about. So it kind of gives it a really cool little thing, at least in my opinion. So I really dig that about this as well. As you go through this album, I also enjoy the way in which they're able to kind of space out the lengthier tracks. Now, 2 of the 3 are going to be right there near the start. Seed of Evil and Control the Twisted Mind are 2 of the first 4 songs on the album, whereas you don't have White Wizard come across until the very end of the album. However, it still maintains a strong flow. It still maintains a strong philosophy. And really, the way in which they space out some of these tracks and kind of, divide some of the quicker paced tracks with some of the more controlled and more, songwriting-driven tracks reminds me a lot about American band Metal Church, which has also been a good band at doing this, especially with their last couple of albums, being able to space an epic song really sandwiched between a couple of sides, I guess you could say, like an A side and a B side of more, traditional 3 to 4 to potentially 5-minute long tracks. So overall, that's a nice scope. This is thrash metal. This is thrash metal. I don't have to speak very, very much about the music. However, I must say that the guitar work is very well done. The songwriting on this is very powerful, and you definitely can tell that this band has the capability of doing everything that perhaps would really stimulate a thrash metal fan. You do have the ability to have some pretty awesome solos in there. You have some great percussions with the drums, and the bass has definitely got some thickness to it. However, they don't feel the need to really overindulge themselves at all times in order to really showcase that they have this ability. They're more so really akin and happy with just showcasing a decent and really, whenever I say decent, I mean very, very good songwriting motif, a really great songwriting mentality to them, where this has become really the focal point, the strength of their music, as opposed to them having to really rely on having insane solos or really rely on having fierce lyrics that just have a lot of directness, boldness to it, real kick in your ass imagery to it. This is instead something where the combined effort of everything is really the stimulating point for this album. The combined effort of everything is what gives this album a little bit more of a creative nod and a little bit more of a variety to it than you would perhaps hear from another band like these guys. Because of that, I have to give this album an 83 out of 100. This is strong, this is a good album, and let me tell you, for this being released in January, really, this has given them kind of a front and center seat to potentially really make a difference throughout the rest of the year, throughout the rest of 2014. Give themselves a real pleasant position to be in, where basically every other album that comes out after this, they're basically looking at that album and saying, hey, can you top what we just did? Because I don't think you can. But what did you guys think? What do you guys think of Suicidal Angels? What did you think about this album? Tell me in the comments. And also, whenever you listen to these guys, who do you hear in their sound? I told you who I think that I hear a little bit, but who do you hear whenever you listen to these guys? Let that be in the comments as well, and I will talk to you guys with the next review, which will be coming very, very soon. See you later.